The shoulder is all stewing meat. I quite like to let groups just do what they want to do on this. You keep them safe, you watch what they're doing with their knives, but there's not a lot they can do wrong. I will literally just say, think about the big chunks of meat you might like to find in a stew, make some of those. Don't kind of lead them any more than that if you don't have to. You've got the shoulder blade, sitting proud. I might demo that cut. So I'll find the shoulder blade, see this ridge, and I'll make a cut either side of it. And then what you can do at this point is get them used to using their fingers. So when they come onto haunches later, it's a bit easier. But then you literally, all you're doing is forcing meat away from the bone, using your thumbs, using your fingers. There's nothing they can do wrong here. You're just opening it up. Do this first, so this meat can start stewing down. It's big chunks of stewing meat. Don't go small. That is a perfect piece of meat to stick in a stew. And do this sooner rather than later, so you can do it in your Dutch oven, you can get it on the fire. You want to be cooking this for 3 or 4 hours. If you can, get your wine, your veg, warm, hot in your Dutch oven, so when the meat goes in, it's not starting to cook, it is cooking. So trimming up haunch steaks, you want something which is going to cook evenly on the fire, and that's pretty much what you're cutting it for. With the top side, you've got a really great piece of meat, but the ends are much thinner, so they'll cook much, much faster. So all I'm going to do, come up, trim off that thinner end, and do exactly the same on the other side. And to be honest, especially with this cut, you don't need to do any more trimming. This stuff just goes straight into your stew pot, and because it's a higher quality meat, it doesn't need to cook for as long, so it's almost like it's made for it. So all your rougher stewing meat goes in your stew earlier, it cooks for longer. By the time this is going in, it's probably only going to need another hour or two, and this will cook perfectly. Rump, you can tidy it up a bit if you want, but the fire will do the work for you. That's ready to go. Salmon cut, just take off the thin end. It's a diddy little steak, but it's a small animal. Second salmon cut, I'm actually going to leave this fat on the outside. All I'm going to do is just trim off the ends. That's salmon cut. Thick flank, we've already done, but what I am going to do is trim off that really thin meat right on the side of it, because that'll just char up. The silver side, you've got to get a bit more technical. The way I would do it is trim off the sides a little bit, so this meat will cook much, much faster. We want an even cook, so I'm going to trim it. Again, primo stewing meat. Get it in your stew. And then you can see the silver skin sitting either side of the silver side. And what I'm going to do, use my fingers to push it up, and I'm going to try and take off that silver skin without taking off too much meat. And then all you need to do, as much as you can be bothered to do, is just to tidy it up a little bit. And for me, that's perfect. This connective tissue across the back will contract. That's what causes meat to curl up in the pan. So what I'm going to do with this is take, again, a really sharp knife, and I'm just going to score the back very lightly, just to prevent that connective tissue from curling the meat up too much. Last little thing on the haunch, you've got your shank. It's relatively easy to take this off. It's a nice thing to show your group to do. You can whack this meat, it's great meat, in your stew if you want to, or take it home for yourself. So, you've got your femur, I'm going to squeeze it down to put some tension up here, and then knife under the kneecap, and then in between the bones, and then put some force down on it. Once you've done that, it will start to weaken off really, really quickly. And once that's done, just use the bone as a guide. So letting gravity do the work for you. Sharp knife. And this is good meat, but there's lots and lots of connective tissue in it, so you've got to cook it low and slow. If you've had your stew on for a good couple of hours already, this might not cook down fast enough, so you can take it away. It's very similar to lamb shank in terms of how long you need to cook it for. Loin. Wonderful meat, absolutely fantastic for steaks, but has a very annoying length of silver skin that runs all the way up and down it. It's relatively easy to take off if you've got the right tools. Use a board, bring everything to the edge of a table. That will make life lots easier. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn the loin so the silver skin is down on the board. And then with a sharp, relatively flexible knife, what we're going to do is we are going to slide the knife between the silver skin and the meat about 1/5 of the way down, and we're going to slide the knife all the way down, and the idea is to leave as little meat on the silver skin as possible. Once you've gone one way, turn the knife and go the other way. Moment of truth. As you roll it off, there should be no silver skin left behind, and should ideally have something that you can see through. Left quite a lot of meat on that one. I'm sure it won't affect the steaks, but ideally, just the silver skin. All I'm going to do is take off the really thin end, and that's primo stewing meat. And then I'm going to do it into two. I'm going to do it to our thin end of loin and our thick end of loin, and that's just literally the difference between them. Straight cut down and through. So we have our thin end and we have our thick end. And you can see with these, the muscle fibers run a little bit on the diagonal. So when we carve this, when it comes off the fire after it's been rested, the best way of carving it is at right angles to those fibers. So we're not going straight across, we're going at right angles to those fibers. If you have short muscle fibers, you have tender meat. If you have longer muscle fibers, your meat will have more bite.